Thank you very much for a kind introduction. Vice Chancellor H.C. Carnute, distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is truly my greatest honor to be invited to this annual research symposium of the University of Colombo. I'd like to thank the organizing committee for inviting me here. I also like to thank the students for their excellent performance. And I will talk about the sustainable development of global supply chains. But let me introduce myself a little bit more. I'm an economist doing a lot of works, empirical works in the fields of international economics, development economics, and Japanese and Asian economies. I did a lot of work on the effect of trade, foreign direct investment, foreign aid, and social networks on economic growth and development. For this purpose, I did a lot of field works in various countries, as shown in these pictures. Recently, I'm focusing more on the role of global economic networks, including global supply chains, international research collaboration networks in economic growth and resilience, using a large-scale data. I've written more than 70 papers in referee journals, as already introduced. And recently, I'm very happy to find out that I'm highly ranked among researchers by this Scholar GPS, organized by Meta. And in fact, you can find that I am the top 17th in economic impact analysis. But I'm very much honored, but I'm sure that this is kind of a mistake by AI that created this ranking. Anyway, this is about me. And I would like to note that I did a field trip in Sri Lanka with 15 students of mine last February, visiting so many places like this, including the University of Colombo. At the time, Vice Chancellor Carnute was so kind and generous to all of us. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank him very much. Also, this trip was possible because of one of my graduate students from Sri Lanka, Ilani, who received a master's degree from Waseda University last September. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank and congratulate Ilani. So now let's talk about global supply chains. I would first talk about what research tells us about supply chain sustainability, starting with the current situation of global supply chains. And then I will show that economic effects of supply chain disruptions are substantial. However, diversified supply chains are resilient and sustainable, and diversification and innovation help to avoid economic coercion as well. And then I will talk about what we should do to create more sustainable supply chains based on research outcomes, including mine. I would like to propose three. One is to strengthen supply chains with the Global South. Two is to promote international research collaboration. And finally, to effectively utilize industrial policy. So actually, my talk is quite different from the previous talks, but I'm sure that it's kind of related, particularly the latter part is related to the argument of Professor Mnashke about the Global South. Okay, so now current situations. We all know that the US-China decoupling has deteriorated sustainability of global supply chains. The US, Europe, and Japan have implemented policies to restrict trade and investment with China. And China also fought back. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you that the slides are available from this left QR code. So if you're interested in the, these slides, you can get it from this QR code. And also, if you are interested in myself, the right QR code is for my website, so you can connect to my website. Sorry about that. So, but even so, I'd like to emphasize that many Asian countries still heavily rely on China in supply chains. This figure is showing the share of China in imports of intermediate goods. You can see that South Korea, Indonesia, Australia are increasing their reliance on China. Sri Lanka and Japan are stable, but the level is quite high. However, the US has reduced its reliance on China substantially since 2018, the beginning of the US-China trade conflicts. So these figures are also showing a similar thing, showing changes in imports of major commodities in total and from China during the period 2017 to 2023. You can see that Japan and Germany actually increased their reliance on China or in imports of many major commodities. However, if you look at the US, you can see that the US reduced its reliance on China, and at the same time, the US actually increased its total imports. So the US is actually successfully diversifying its supply chains, keeping the total imports. If you look at Sri Lanka, you can see that Sri Lanka reduced its reliance on China, but also total imports. That means that you are kind of losing economic benefits because of the decoupling. So I will touch upon this issue later. And in this situation where many countries are relying on China, economic effects of supply chain disruptions can be substantial. This is shown by my simulation study with Professor Inoue using an agent-based model and rich firm level data for Japan, including 1 million firms and 4 million supply chain ties. We first showed that economic shocks propagate through supply chains quickly, taking the case of the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011. So these maps show that the economic shock by the earthquake propagated quickly through supply chains across Japan and sustained in the very long run, leading to a huge effect in total. This is mostly because small world property of supply chain networks, which means that the distribution of the number of suppliers and clients is not normal, but very much skewed, which means that there are several hub firms with an extremely large number of suppliers and clients, like 10,000 suppliers and clients. And through these hub firms, firms in the economy are indirectly linked with each other within a few steps. So that's why the economic shocks can propagate through supply chains very quickly. So using this framework, we further found that the effect of disruption of imports from China on the Japanese economy would be substantial. When we assume imports from China reduced by 80% for 2 months, then 40% of value-added production of Japan would be lost. This is a huge effect, because the initial shock is magnified through domestic supply chains. We also find that the effect of import disruption of more upstream products like metals, machinery, plastic, and chemical products would be larger because, again, propagation through domestic supply chains. And this implies that the disruption of raw materials, such as rare earth metals, may have a huge effect. So we have to be very much concerned. So what should we deal with these risks of supply chain disruption? Many studies, including mine, show that diversified, particularly internationally diversified supply chains are sustainable and resilient. In this study, I examined the effect of supply chain links with firms damaged by Hurricane Sandy in the US in 2012 on their sales growth. Then I found that firms with foreign partners were less affected by supply chain disruptions. This is most likely because these globalized firms can substitute new partners, new suppliers and clients for damaged partners. So this study suggests that substitution is the key to the supply chain resilience and sustainability, and international partners can lead to this, can enable easier substitution. And there are several other studies leading to the same conclusion, but I will skip these because of a time constraint. But I want to note that diversification can also avoid economic coercion. A typical example of economic coercion is the restriction on exports of rare earth metals to Japan by China in 2010 due to Senkaku Island issues. And at that time, China's share in Japan's imports of rare earth metals was huge, more than 80%. So it is natural that these products, rare earth metals, were targeted by the economic coercion. And how did Japan deal with this economic coercion? This figure shows that Japan drastically reduced China's share in imports of rare earth metals from 90% at the peak to 40% by diversifying source partners to, for example, Thailand and Vietnam. And also, you can notice that the total imports of rare earth metals was stable until 2020, implying, despite of the rise in demand for ICT products using rare earth metals. So this implies that Japanese companies successfully innovated alternative technologies using less rare earth metals. So this is an example of such innovation by Toyota for electric motors and by Daikin for air conditioners. So these examples show that innovation is another key to deal with economic coercion and to create sustainable supply chains. And so far, I have emphasized that diversification and innovation are the two keys to create a sustainable supply chains. But here, I want to emphasize that I'm not saying that we should decouple from China. In fact, the world is not decoupled, and the world should not be decoupled. So these figures are showing changes in exports of major commodities in total and from China. And you can see that at the bottom, the US and Germany actually increased their exports to China and in total. But Japan and Sri Lanka unfortunately reduced exports of some commodities to China. And so our total exports are kind of stable. So we are losing a little bit of economic profits. by this decoupling. So here I want to emphasize that balancing between sustainable supply chains and economic benefits, economic profits, is quite important when we think about our creation of supply chain resilience and sustainability. So now, what should we do to create more sustainable supply chains? The theory suggests we need policies. Why? Because creating supply chain ties is costly to the focal firm, but also provides benefits to its suppliers and clients. So this means that the social benefit of creating social ties is greater than the private benefits to the focal firm. In that case, in the market economy, the level of diversification of supply chains is less than social optimum. Therefore, we need policies. And from a perspective of Japan or one of the Western countries, I want to argue that supply chains with the Global South are not sufficient. The left figure is showing the share of selected countries and regions in Japan's imports of intermediate products. So you can see that the share of China is declining a little bit, but the share of ASEAN and share of India are not increasing. And the right figure is showing the Japan's foreign direct investment in the manufacturing sector. Again, FDI to ASEAN or India is not increasing much, although FDI to the US is increasing a lot. And this is showing FDI to Sri Lanka. You can easily see that FDI from the US and Japan has been stagnant and much, much lower than FDI from China, Hong Kong, and India. So Japan and the Western countries need to expand supply chains with the Global South more for supplier diversification and also export promotion. In fact, India and ASEAN will be the third and fourth largest markets in the very near future. However, one barrier to the expansion of supply chains to the Global South is infrastructure. So many studies show that infrastructure development can promote supply chains. For example, this study showed that Kyushu Shinkansen, a high-speed train in Japan, increased firm performance and supply chain linkages in the rural regions along Shinkansen. And actually, this Kyushu is a region where currently semiconductor-related firms are agglomerating. So obviously, Shinkansen was helpful to the promotion of industry cluster. Another study showed that another Shinkansen, Hokuriku Shinkansen, increased research collaboration between the regions and Tokyo and the number of patents in the region. So that means infrastructure development can promote both the supply chain development and also innovation. And this one is showing that in Sri Lanka, infrastructure is not sufficient. This is taken from a report by FAO showing agricultural supply chains in Colombo. You can see that agriculture products are transported a lot in the region, but this report is suggesting that infrastructure, transport infrastructure is not sufficient. And talking about the infrastructure, you know that China contributed a lot to infrastructure development in the Global South through their Belt and Road Initiative. Recently, I examined the effect of BRI and found that BRI increased not only FDI from China to the BRI countries, but also FDI from the US and from Japan. Accordingly, GDP of GDP per capita of BRI countries increase a lot. So China is kind of contributing a lot to the development of the global south. Although I understand that there may be many problems in their strategies. And because I'm a Japanese, I want to also mention contribution of Japan. In my study, I found that the infrastructure ODA, official development assistance from Japan, actually increased the FDI, particularly from Japan. This is possibly because infrastructure ODA can strengthen bilateral relationships and information flows. A typical example from Sri Lanka is this port of Colombo developed by a JICA project a long time ago. And after that, Colombo dockyard, a joint venture company with a Japanese company, was established. And also, in addition to infrastructure development, technical assistance through ODA can also develop sustainable supply chains. I actually did a lot of work on this issue. For example, I found that JICA's technical assistance in the foundry industry in Indonesia and to the coffee farmers in Ethiopia, both projects contributed to the development of supply chains between Japan and the recipient country. So I want to suggest that more ODA should be utilized more effectively. For example, utilizing Japan's special terms for economic partnership, STEP, which is a tied aid with the transfer of state-of-the-art technology. One example of these STEP projects in Sri Lanka is the bridge over the Kelani River, which is an ongoing project. Also, I'd like to mention that human capital development is as important as physical infrastructure development. And one example is this plastic management capacity project in Sri Jayanapura University. I'm sorry, it's not the University of Colombo. But anyway, this kind of human capital development is also very important. And another barrier to the expansion of the supply chains to the global south is institutional differences, particularly differences in political and economic institutions, such as those related to democracy, human rights, and sustainability. And this figure is showing the negative correlation between the difference in the democracy level between the two countries and their bilateral trade. So the difference in the democracy can be a hurdle to the trade relationships. And this one is showing the democracy level for the US, Japan, Sri Lanka, and India. Unfortunately, there's a gap between these two types of countries. And these figures are showing the same correlation between the democracy difference and bilateral trade, particularly for the US and for Japan. And the red circles are showing Sri Lanka. So this implies that the trade between the US and Sri Lanka could be larger if the democracy gap was smaller. However, if you look at the left figure, particularly for Japan, the correlation, the negative correlation between the difference in the democracy level and bilateral trade is not that large compared with the US. So that means Japan is quite flexible to dealing with the difference in the political institutions when we do trade. So basically, I'm suggesting that the West should be flexible to the differences and allow for gradual changes in the global South. And in that sense, Japan can be a bridge between the West and the global South, because Japan is kind of a latecomer in the global economy, and also we understand the value of the global South and Asia. Okay, so far we have talked about supply chains, the transaction of goods. But now let's talk about knowledge networks. Because recently, knowledge networks are often overlapped with supply chains. For example, suppliers and client firms are sharing information and technology and collaborating to develop new products. And in fact, one of my studies showed that such research collaboration can improve the quality of innovation at the firm level. And this figure shows that the effect of international research collaboration is much larger than the effect of domestic research collaboration. This is possibly because through international research collaboration, firms can learn new knowledge that is not available domestically. So I want to suggest that international research collaboration, which I call knowledge friendshoring, should be promoted. However, unfortunately, international research collaboration by Japanese firms is not very active. In terms of the share of international co-invention in total patent applications, Japan is the worst too among major countries. However, still, I'm happy to see that recently, international research collaboration of Japan with the US, Europe, and Taiwan has been promoted by policies, particularly in the semiconductor industry, as shown in these figures. But here, we need policies, again, such as information provision, matching support, and research grants for collaboration. I also want to note that research collaboration between the West and the Global South is now active and should be promoted more. This figure shows the international research collaboration on the COVID-19 medical research. So you can see Sri Lanka, the red circle, and also you can also see India, Bangladesh, many Global South countries. So the Global South countries are emerging as innovators in the world research field. And you can also see that Japan is close to Sri Lanka in this map, which means Japan and Sri Lanka are collaborating with each other for COVID-19 research to some extent at least. Oh, by the way, maybe here we can see Sri Lanka possibly because of researchers in the University of Colombo, as shown in the video at the beginning of this symposium. Okay, finally, let me mention industry policy. Because recently, industry policy has been implemented by many countries, such as the US, Japan, Europe, and China, to develop sustainable supply chains. And the theory of industrial policy suggests that industrial policies such as infant industry protection using trade restrictions can be justified in the presence of increasing return to scale in a particular industry. And also onshoring policies can be justified for supply chain resilience. However, still, industry policies are not always successful because of government failures and inefficiency. So we need to be careful when we implement industry policies in practice. Moreover, empirical evidence on the effect of industrial policy are mixed. Some found a positive effect, others found a negative or insignificant effect. In particular, if we look at China's industrial policy, one study finds that subsidies to firms have a positive effect on productivity only in competitive industries. And another study found that subsidies were provided to low productivity firms and have a positive impact on employment, but negative impact on productivity. So even in China, we don't see, industrial policy is not always successful. Then what about recent industrial policy in the semiconductor industry in particular? Japan attracted a plant to TSMC, the top semiconductor foundry firm, to the western part of Japan, Kyushu, using a huge subsidy of $8 billion. But I believe that this industrial policy has been successful so far. Why? First, the government attracted FDI of high-tech firms. And it is evidenced that technology spills over from FDI with high technologies by several studies, including mine. And also, it was actually, Kyushu was already a region of industrial cluster of electrical machinery and automobile industry. And after the attraction of TSMC's plant, other firms like materials, user firms, and also machinery firms are agglomerating in this region, creating a supply chain, regional supply chains. And it is also evidence that technology spills over through such regional supply chains. And in addition to the production plant, a research center of TSMC was also attracted by policies. So then we would expect knowledge spillovers through international research collaboration. So that's why I'm quite positive about the current industrial policy, although of course we should still be careful about the future effectiveness. But this example is showing the importance of evidence-based policy making, EBPM. And so today's symposium topic is frontier research. So we can contribute to the society by frontier research in this way. So let me summarize and conclude. Sustainable global supply chains can be created by further expansion between the West and the Global South, in particular Japan and Sri Lanka, through developing infrastructure via ODA and promoting FDI, and allowing for institutional differences between the West and the Global South. In this regard, I believe Japan can be a bridge. And we further have to promote research collaboration between the two parties, and further we need to utilize industrial policy effectively. Thank you very much.